Back on the Young Turks. Now we have a great in-studio guest for you guys, John Prendergrast. He's with the Enough Project, which is under the Center for American Progress. John, welcome to the Young Turks.
Thank you.
Great to have you in the studio.
Appreciate it, Jake.
So tell us what the Enough Project is.
Well, we started about a year and a half ago in response to the genocide in Darfur, the horrible human rights crimes in Congo, the child soldiers' abductions by the Lord's Resistance Army in northern Uganda, these terrible manifestations of war, genocide, rape as a tool of war, and child soldier recruitment, as a means to educate the American public about what's going on, but also to demonstrate to them that there are things that we can do in support of American foreign policy to bring some of these horrible crises to a resolution so that we don't have to keep spending billions of dollars a year on humanitarian assistance and on peacekeeping forces. There are solutions.
All right, so let me tackle that one thing at a time. First, you know, we always talk about the genocide in Darfur. Colin Powell famously called it a genocide. What does genocide mean? What's the definition?
It means that an entity, usually a government, targets a particular group of people on the basis of their identity, usually ethnicity or their race or their religion, and attempts to eradicate those people, to eliminate them in whole or in part, that group of people using all kinds of methods.
But that's key, in whole or in part, because in Darfur, they're not trying to kill everybody of that race, are they?
No, they've killed maybe 300,000, or 300,000 have died as a result of their offensives, but 2.5 million, almost 2.75 million people have been rendered homeless, living in these camps, either across the border in Chad or inside Darfur, and then the government just turns on and off the aid tap, so it just demoralizes people and reduces their ability to cope with the kind of situation they're in.
Is there a definition between, or is there a difference between genocide and Holocaust?
Well, the Holocaust is really particularly about what happened to the Jews during and others in the World War II. Okay. So I think there's a real feeling that was a unique event, and that retains the Holocaust with a capital H, right. And that genocide is a phenomenon we've seen over centuries, where usually a state attempts to destroy in whole or in part a particular group of people.
All right, I got you. Now, what can we do about it is the next logical question, because every time there's a Republican in office, the Democrats will say, I can't believe he didn't do anything, and then a Democrat will come into office, and the Republicans will then amusingly say, oh, I can't believe he didn't do anything, right? Like as if they would ever care. But seriously, then neither side appears to do anything, but is that appearance wrong? What are we doing, and what can we do?
Well, the good news is there's a lot that can be done between nothing and bombing. You know, we don't have to send in the 82nd Airborne every time there's some kind of an issue that rises to the level of genocide. There's a lot of things that we can do diplomatically, economic sanctions, use of all kinds of different tools of statecraft and of diplomacy that are available to us. So in the case of, for example, in the case of Congo, in northeastern Congo during the earlier part of this decade, when we saw the possibility of genocide between two groups of people, very similar to the Hutu and Tutsi in Rwanda, in that particular region, the Europeans sent in a force, and they basically got in between the two groups and prevented a genocide. So it didn't cost, it cost, probably 20 or 30 lives of the European soldiers for the entire year of their occupation. Now those 20 or 30 families grieve, but it was an extraordinary example of when particular force is utilized, we can actually stop a genocide from happening.
So would you suggest that as a normal course, like for example what's happening with Congo now? Real quick, tell us what is happening, and then what could we do about that specifically? Yeah,
that's the amazing thing is that this is the deadliest war in the world since the Holocaust back in the 1940s. 5.25 million people have died in the last 12 years in Congo. There's nothing even remotely like it anywhere in the world.
Now, I have to be honest that, I don't mean to be a jerk about this, that I'm skeptical about that number, okay? Now, I don't know anything about it. That's why we have you here, right? But it just seems so overwhelming that either it's gross neglect by the media, which entirely is possible, right? Or is that because of starvation, et cetera? So did 5.25 million people get killed, murdered?
Very good question.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. Most of the people that died in the Ethiopian famine, most of the people that died in Somalia before we sent in troops, most of the people that have died in Congo died as they were displaced because of the war, and then they died from health or nutrition-related diseases that eat away at their ability to survive. So basically in Congo, you have this incredibly deadly war, but it's fueled by our consumer demands. Strangely enough, and inadvertently, by our laptops and cell phones and iPods and all the rest of the kind of electronic devices we use on a daily basis are powered by minerals that are mined in the Congo. So you have tungsten, which creates the vibration mechanism on your telephone. We have tin, which is the solder in the circuit board of every electronic product. We're even looking around this room, and tantalum stores the electricity in them. So we call them the 3 T's: tin, tungsten, and tantalum. Who's heard of these things? But they end up actually leading directly to the deadliest war in the world.
So that's the last time I put my cell phone on vibrate.
But here's the good news: is like instead of some people will turn away, some people will feel guilty, but some people will say, "Okay, what can I do about it?"
Exactly.
Let's use our cell phones to call. What we're asking people to do is to call up your cell phone manufacturer, call up your cell phone retailer, or email them and say, "You know what? I want to buy. Someday I'd like to buy a conflict-free phone, and whoever is able to give me that conflict-free or rape-free phone, I'm going to switch carriers and go to them." So create the market demand for products that are conscientious about what they're doing to human beings as they make in their creation.
Real quick, tell me what a rape-free product means.
Yeah, it means that there has been an audited verification down all the way to the supply chain of that device in your hand, all the way down to the point of origin, where the minerals come from, where the raw materials come from to make your phone. And they verified through independent audits that there was no conflict was related to the making or the mining and the exporting of those minerals.
Because in these conflicts, they're, as part of the way of taking over more territory, et cetera, they're going in and systematically raping the women in that area?
Yeah, it's a means of social control. If we look back at some of the horrific wars of the 20th century, you saw that increasingly rape was being used as a tool of war and a tool of social control. In Congo, the militias that are vying for the control of this very, very lucrative mineral trade use rape to humiliate and destroy and subjugate populations in areas that they're attempting to control the mines or driving the rival militias out. And if you want to, in some way, shape, or form, destroy the spirit of your opponent, you attack the women.
And finally, what should the United States government do in a place like Congo?
Well, also good news here is that Congress is finally learning about this issue. So we have the beginnings of legislation. We have a bill in the Senate called the Congo Conflict Minerals Bill, very simple, S891, which addresses directly this whole trade in conflict minerals, tries to create more transparency and responsibility on the part of corporations, and the House is just about to introduce their version of the bill. Senator Boxer has already sponsored the Senate bill, but Feinstein hasn't. And so we have about 10 co-sponsors over the last month or so since it was introduced.
Responsibility for the corporations. My Republican friends tell me that they just take that responsibility without any government interference at all, that they're just very responsible and don't care as much about the profits. I'm surprised to find out that the government needs to nudge them in that direction.
Yeah, that's really surprising.
Perhaps not surprising. All right, John Prendergrast is with the Enough Project, and where can people find out more about it?
EnoughProject.org.
Well, that's very obvious. That makes sense. All right, thanks so much for being on. We really appreciate it. All right, we'll come right back. Young Turks.